You remember that room, the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful but heavy, like air pressed down with something unsaid. You were just a child, maybe coloring, maybe lining up toys in perfect rows because at least that gave you control. The door was half open. You hoped someone might look in, just once, and say your name. But no one did. You learned early that love didn't come freely, it had to be earned, through silence, obedience, or making yourself useful. You became small so the world wouldn't notice your needs. You became good so no one could call you a burden. And you carried that survival strategy into adulthood like a secret language you forgot you were speaking. You learned to disappear, and it worked. But at what cost? Somewhere deep inside, there is still that child sitting in that quiet room, waiting. The one who looked up to see if anyone was watching, who did something kind or impressive and heard only silence. That's the moment invisibility took root. You didn't plan to vanish, you simply adapted. When attention meant trouble or rejection, disappearing felt safer. The human heart, even small and fragile, knows how to survive. It knows how to make itself invisible when love feels conditional. And the tragedy is, that strategy works so well you forget how to stop. Your story might have begun in subtle ways. Maybe you grew up with a parent who was always busy, anxious, or sad. Maybe they loved you, but their love came wrapped in exhaustion. When you cried, they sighed. When you needed help, they said they were tired. You looked at their face and saw disappointment, not in you but in life. And so you made a decision, not in words, but in the silent logic of a child: if I stay quiet, maybe they'll smile again. That's how you became the emotional thermostat of your home. You learned to read moods before you even knew your own. You scanned the room like radar, searching for signs of danger, tension, or withdrawal. That's called hypervigilance, a nervous system trained to monitor the emotional weather. You didn't grow up carefree. You grew up on alert. And when that alertness became your normal, it changed you. You learned to fix others before they broke. You brought comfort to the angry parent, humor to the sad one, and silence to the overwhelmed one. That's parentification, when the child becomes the caretaker. It looks noble from the outside, but it's a form of invisible labor. You became reliable, responsible, calm. You grew up too fast, not because you wanted to but because you had to. And when you finally received praise for being so mature, something inside you cracked. You realized being good meant being invisible. As you grew, your mask evolved. Maybe you became the achiever, the golden child who made everyone proud. Maybe you became the helper, the one who made sure no one ever felt what you felt, unseen. Or maybe you became the ghost, the one who fades into the background, observing more than participating. Each role was a survival costume. Adults praised it: you're so independent, you never cause trouble, you're so responsible. But praise is not the same as love. Every time you were rewarded for suppressing your needs, the real you, messy, emotional, spontaneous, stepped further back. You became a performance, a collection of traits optimized for survival. And then you grew up. You built a life that, on the surface, looked fine. You worked hard, maybe excelled, maybe learned how to please bosses and partners the way you once pleased parents. But inside, something was missing. You didn't know how to rest. You didn't know how to ask for help without guilt. You didn't even know what your needs were. You might find yourself over-explaining to avoid conflict, apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, or fixing others' problems because sitting with your own discomfort feels unbearable. You might crave connection but fear it once it comes close. You might choose partners who don't truly see you, because being unseen feels familiar, even safe. You might chase perfection at work, because mistakes once meant emotional exile. You might find yourself repeating patterns that make no sense to the adult mind but perfect sense to the child who learned that safety comes from control. You might shrink in conversations so others feel comfortable. You might laugh off hurt because tears once brought silence. You might sabotage love because deep down you don't trust it to stay. These are not flaws, they are echoes. The body remembers the silence. The nervous system keeps score. You're not broken, you're conditioned. And beneath it all lies one heartbreaking truth: children would rather feel connected than authentic. When you were small, if your caregivers couldn't handle your emotions, you abandoned your authenticity to keep their love. You dimmed your light so they wouldn't feel small. You silenced your pain so they wouldn't feel guilt. You became what they needed so they wouldn't leave. Children will do anything for belonging, even abandon themselves. That's the core wound of the unseen child. And that wound doesn't disappear with age, it just hides under achievements, relationships, or spiritual growth. You might meditate, journal, succeed, but until you address that buried child, the ache remains. The day you realize no one is coming to rescue that child is both devastating and liberating. Because now, the rescue becomes your job. You, the adult self, are the one you've been waiting for. That doesn't mean blaming your parents forever, it means understanding that what you needed back then must now come from you. The validation you crave, the tenderness you sought, the presence you longed for, those are gifts you can give yourself now. You can reparent the part of you that never got to be messy, loud, or imperfect. You can whisper to that child, "I see you." And each time you do, the nervous system relaxes a little more. The child stops scanning for danger and starts believing in safety. Healing begins when you stop waiting to be seen and start seeing yourself. It begins when you catch yourself saying yes out of fear and choose no from love. When you rest without guilt. When you cry without apology. When you speak your truth even if your voice shakes. That's reparenting. That's what it means to give yourself what you were once denied, emotional permission to exist. You can start by asking gentle questions. What did I need back then that I never got? What part of me still believes I must earn love? What am I afraid will happen if I stop being useful? Don't rush the answers. Just listen. This is the work of shadow healing, bringing light to the parts of you that once lived in darkness. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about remembering yourself. The unseen child inside you is not broken. They are waiting to be witnessed. Each time you offer compassion instead of criticism, you tell that child, you matter now. You are safe now. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be seen. The truth is, healing isn't a straight line. Some days you'll feel powerful, others you'll feel like that child again, small and invisible. That's okay. That's the nervous system recalibrating, learning that visibility is no longer a threat. You can help it by creating safety through consistency, routines, boundaries, gentle self-talk. You can practice noticing when you're people-pleasing and pause before reacting. You can say, it's okay to disappoint someone if it means I stay true to myself. These small acts of defiance against old conditioning are acts of love. Eventually, you realize that invisibility was never your nature, it was your armor. And now, you don't need it anymore. You can walk into rooms and feel the air shift, not because you're demanding attention, but because you finally occupy your own space. You can meet someone's gaze and not flinch. You can rest without guilt, laugh without fear, love without performing. That's the freedom the unseen child always dreamed of. The journey from invisibility to authenticity is not about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before the world told you to shrink. You may never get an apology from the people who didn't see you, but you can give yourself closure by saying, I see me now. That's enough. The silence that once hurt you can now become peace. The loneliness that once haunted you can now become solitude. You can turn the pain into purpose, the wound into wisdom. You never had a childhood, but you still have a future. And the moment you notice yourself, truly, gently, without judgment, you are no longer invisible. So take a breath. Feel your heartbeat. That's your inner child saying, I'm still here. And this time, you don't have to wait for anyone to look your way. You can look inward and whisper the words that change everything, I see you. I will not leave you again. If this spoke to something inside you, share your reflection. Because in naming what was once unseen, you make it real. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the hidden corners of the psyche, the parts that shape love, fear, and identity. And remember, healing isn't about finding light elsewhere, it's about turning toward the part of you that was waiting to be seen and saying, finally, you're home.